Hello and welcome to Food Tank's webinar series. My name is Sarah Small and I'm Food Tank's Chief of Staff. I'm really excited about today's webinar with Thomas McQuillan. He is a business analyst for Baldor Specialties Foods, and he has been tasked with creating a strategic plan to make Baldor more sustainable. Thomas has also spearheaded the SPAR-Cs, which is scraps spelled backwards, creative, initiative to reduce food waste throughout the company. And Baldor's sustainability initiatives are also focused on overall waste reduction throughout the entire organization, and the company has launched a number of initiatives to become more energy efficient. So we're really excited to hear more about reducing food waste from Thomas today, and it's truly an honor to have you here. So just a few more things before we begin. This webinar will be recorded and posted on foodtank.com later today, as well as Food Tank's YouTube channel. You can also follow along and participate on Twitter using #FoodTank. And please also submit your questions in your chat box or email them to me directly, Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, @foodtank.com. We will have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of Thomas's presentation for a Q&A session. So without further ado, Thomas, it's truly an honor to have you here today, as I mentioned before, and I'm excited to hear your presentation, so I'll give you the floor now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be joining all of you. I don't know how many of you are in our audience today, but I know for a fact that many of you are people who I've been working closely with over the last year to help shape our thinking around waste reduction in general, and more specifically food. When I was shared the topic, changing perception and shifting cultural norms, I was really excited to speak about this because I think this is it's a really necessary. It's really going to be necessary for us to shift cultural norms in order to have the broader members of our society begin to have an impact on the reduction of waste when it comes to food specifically. It's not something that can be isolated to a few organizations who take the lead, but rather it needs to become part of our culture, part of what we think about every day in terms of the way we handle our food. And before I get started, last evening I was sort of giving thoughts to this presentation, and I want to sort of frame the discussion on this. You know, how many, if we look at food, the food that we buy in the grocery store or the food we purchase for our restaurant or our food institution, whatever that might be, we wouldn't imagine that food as an asset would be discarded just arbitrarily. We should be thinking about it as something that helps us create value for organizations. If we went to to fill our car with gasoline, we wouldn't anticipate that the gasoline attendant would fill our car and then arbitrarily dump a gallon of gas because they could afford to. Yet we treat food that way every day. And so what I would encourage everyone to start to think about, if you're not already thinking about this, is how can we better utilize all of our food, again, whether it's in an institution or at home. The next slide you're going to look at is a quote that Michelle Obama made when when President Obama first took office. And I think it was a very encouraging move to begin to think about how important the way our food is grown and processed, so that we can make sure that the people in our nation are eating valuable food. And so that's been a big part of her and President Obama's administration. I'd like to see this take one step further, which would be to talk about the sustainability around food, and also making sure that food that is valuable for consumption gets into the hands of the food insecure in a better and more purposeful way. The next image you see is one I share often when I'm speaking about waste, the food waste in particular, because what you see here is a mountain of rubbish, obviously, but we could estimate that about 37 to 45% of what you see in this pile is actually organic food matter. And it's obviously up against a magnificent ocean or sea, and it's a shame that we would be so careless to think that at some point this won't make its way into the ocean and obviously contaminate our environment. I like this particular screen shot from the EPA. I think it's a little dated, but at least it shows us the different categories of waste, the impact that food and yard trimmings have in terms of the percentage that actually is waste. But I love that expression, it's not waste until it's wasted. How many of these products, how much of this in total could be eliminated if it was repurposed or recycled? And if you look at if paper, of course, is that greatest percentage, well, we have some very low-hanging fruit here. We've all seen the food recovery hierarchy, I hope, and if you're not familiar with this, it can really help shape your thinking about how to handle and manage food, what you would call food waste or food that's making it ultimately to landfill at the bottom, which would be the least appropriate solution. But I want to focus for a minute about source reduction. When we think about food and the food that we're going to be cooking to eat, why is it that so much of the food is making it to either landfill or composting or some other industrial use? Why aren't we eating more of it? When we look at a carrot, what part of the carrot is edible? And in fact, the answer is all of it. And so why aren't we consuming all of it? And how many other products, food products, do we not consume that we should consume? And when we listen to the information shared by nutritional experts, they'll talk about the fact that the produce, when we start to think about the skins and the outer layers of the produce, that's where a lot of the nutrition resides. Yet we oftentimes arbitrarily remove it and discard it. And so we're missing out on a lot of the value to that food. And of course, if we do eat that, that's a great example of source reduction. I showed a picture of a composting facility. Composting for me a year ago, I thought would be the best solution for us. I sort of moved away from this as a part of our solution, and I'm moving back towards it. One of the reasons is we're not going to have healthy produce if we don't have healthy soil. And composting can become and should become part of our solution around how we manage what would be food waste and also help improve the quality of our soil. There are different systems within restaurants and food processing facilities that can help also reduce the amount of food product that would be going to landfill. Composting, as we just mentioned, being one. Another one is a waste to water system. We have those here at Baldor, and we are experimenting with a bio-high-tech machine downstairs. It's a relatively small operation, but we're learning a lot about what we can actually put through that system and and begin to understand how we can divert more food from landfill. We actually do some cleaning of some materials, some food products that we would not want to have make it to landfill. And so in this instance, this product is captured, and this is how we bring it over to our bio-high-tech machine. That's the machine there for you to see. So basically that door opens up and we put the material inside there, and then it processes about 100 pounds of food an hour. Another opportunity would be the anaerobic digestion, which is these days and very exciting. I won't get into details on that, but that is seems to be an option that's growing. Something we're talking more and more about. And then, I really want to focus on feeding animals and feeding human beings. So just thinking about feeding animals for a moment. We have, historically 100 years ago, we all lived within a mile of animals, pigs in particular in the United States, and they were great partners of ours to consume a lot of the food product that we chose not to consume. We are going to continue to consume proteins that come to us in the form of these animals, and so how do we make sure that they're fed properly and that we can get to them some of the food products that traditionally made it to these animals? So we're looking at ways to make sure that we work with our farm partners closely so that they can actually consume some of this product and get avoid landfill. This is an example of some feed that's being created very creatively using lots of different food products that would normally make it to landfill to create a feed for animals. Then, of course, we want to talk more about feeding human beings. I think this is a good time, actually, to stop, take a break and watch the video, Sarah, if we could put that on, just to frame the thinking around what becomes food waste.
Oh, my sweet baby, you mean everything to me. I love you.
Can we get strawberries? No, honey. Please? Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. So I think this is I love that video. That was the catalyst for that video is NRDC working in conjunction with the Ad Council. Just waiting for it to finish. So the NRDC was the catalyst for this video and worked together with the Ad Council. And I think that it for me, sends two messages. One is how complex our transportation system is around food. And so that when food finally makes it to our homes, we really need to be more committed to make sure we eat all of the food that we purchase. And obviously, we're all guilty of sort of packing our refrigerator with food that we may buy, and then it continues to get pushed to the back and doesn't get consumed. So I really appreciate that video. When we think about feeding humans, I mean, what better way to share this great asset we have in the United States in terms of when we think about our food product than to share it with people in need? And so, sort of the theme of our next area. Sparks, as Sarah mentioned, is an opportunity for us at Baldor to look at all of the food that remains as part of our food production here at Baldor. We produce the Urban Roots line here, and that includes everything from chunks of pineapple to cat sticks and lettuce products, etc. So there are about 588 different SKUs available to our customers every day, and about a total of 1,400, including some specialty items that can be made out of various fruits and vegetables. As a result of that production, we have these food products remaining. Helen Park, Chef Helen Park at Fresh Direct, is a little shout out for you. She actually came up with the name Sparks to refer to these products, scraps spelled backwards. And the main reason for that was I felt it was important to come up with some nomenclature around this food that indicates that it is in fact still edible, it's food, it should be consumed and not wasted. The next slide you see is actually the Sparks actually dried. We call this our dried vegetable blend, and actually it can be used in a whole host of different applications. It can be used on top of roasted vegetables. It can be added to meatballs, and basically it's 20 different vegetables that are dried and then ready for use essentially. So there's all kinds of different exciting opportunities to use this product. In fact, we actually partnered with the Drexel Food Lab down in Philadelphia, Drexel University, and Chef Jonathan Deutsch and his team, Ali Zeitz, and the other faculty there, to actually create some food products out of the dried vegetable blend. These products that you see showcased here were created by 4 of the students that were part of the lab. And what you see at the top left is a quinoa ball. We had a beignet in the center there, and then we had a carrot cake, and the winning product was a chicken thigh dredged in the vegetable blend and then deep fried and served on a biscuit also made with dried vegetable blend. And we actually had the winners of this competition present these food items at the Philly Chef Conference. So we gave the students from the Drexel Lab an opportunity to showcase the food, and it was very well received. And we feel like we've created a new product here in creating the dried vegetable blend. And we're working now to make sure we can process that and make that available to the greater community. The next slide, you see the Misfit Juicery juice. Misfit Juicery has been a partner of ours for quite some time now, almost right back to our beginning. And basically, Misfit Juiceries, as they think about the environment and the impact that we have on the environment, the way we grow our fruits and vegetables, they'd like to see us utilize a greater portion of what you might define as ugly or imperfect fruits and vegetables, and they classify the sparks as those products as well. So they'll use sparks in the making of a number of their juices. So that's really exciting. We're really happy to be part of their growth. Now we're actually distributing their juice products here at Baldor. So changing perspective and cultural norms, we really all need to consider zero waste as a solution for our own organizations. A lot of my work is to help our partners understand how they can have a greater impact in their organizations, as we have had here at Baldor. We are hoping that by the end of this year, we will be zero organic matter to landfill as a company. And we're doing that by employing a number of components of our strategy which get us to zero waste. And so that's something that's become a priority for our organization. Sarah mentioned earlier that we look at overall waste reduction, not just foods. I just want to very quickly mention some of this. And this also helps on the perception side. If we can identify the products that can be recycled on the front end and they don't get mixed up into in a waste area or sanitation area, we're much better collecting them and then actually recycling them. So we separate all the plastic and cardboard here before it makes it to sanitation, and all of that product is we actually sell it and it's recycled. I also want to just mention that along with produce comes a lot of other waste products that we really need to, as a community, look at. One of them is wax cardboard. It's heavy. It's not recyclable. It's used with a lot of produce because the produce is either wet or it has ice in it, and so the cardboard is essential in order to be able to move that product from farm through distribution to our users. But I'm encouraged to think that there is a better solution than cardboard to come up with a product that would not have as much of a negative impact on. I also show this slide just to see that pallets and drums and any other products that come along with either distribution or food service, to look at each one of those items to see what can actually be recycled. So we actually collect all of our wood pieces, our pallets, even the broken ones, and those are reassembled by a pallet company, and all the wood pieces are either reused in recycled pallets or are chipped to make a wood chip blend, but none of that goes to landfill any longer. Thank you for listening. I tried to make this as concise as possible. I just would like to mention before I take questions that quite a few food items, when we think about what is edible and what isn't edible, it's worth spending some time really understanding what parts of the fruits and vegetables we can consume that we have historically not consumed. For example, like the outside leaves of cabbage, for example, sort of part of a cultural norm to remove those and discard those, but those actually not only, but oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, produce pushes its energy outward as it grows, and so a lot of the nutrients reside in the outer leaves. And things like radishes and beets, the tops not only are delicious, and it's unfortunate so often they're discarded, but they are actually normally packed with lots of nutrients that are essential for good health, and so we shouldn't be so quick to discard them, including things like potato skins, broccoli leaves, really wonderful product. It's rich in vitamin B and different minerals and fiber, and so really valuable. Actually, right at the farm, they should be consumed. One product I like to talk about is kiwi fruit. We oftentimes now use a lot of fruit, but in fact, nutrient-dense fruit. I highly recommend.
Thomas, sorry to interrupt you. Can you pull the microphone a little closer to your mouth? We're losing your audio a little bit.
Okay, that's well. I'm almost ready for questions. Thank you for letting me know, Sarah. And then of course things like pineapple core, you know, and there's several others. It's worth taking some time to really look at in your kitchens, at your home, in your organizations. What are we actually discarding? Look through that vegetable product and see if you can come up with creative ways to utilize that food. And if you have questions, you know, reach out to people that hopefully can answer those for you to help you better utilize a greater amount of food that you purchase. Thank you, Sarah. I'll take questions. That's a good time.
Great, thank you so much, Thomas. It was a really informative presentation and cool to hear all the different aspects of reducing food waste that you're conducting over there at Baldor. So for the next 10-15 minutes, let's go through as many questions as possible. I'll start by asking you a question from our listener. He writes, what part of the supply chain do you think is the easiest or lowest hanging fruit in order to reduce food waste?
So that's a great question. Thank you for that. When I think about the greatest impact we could have on food waste, I like to think about it post-distribution. So when it gets to a retail facility, when it gets to our restaurant partners, when it gets into your home. And that's where a lot of waste occurs that can be avoided. When we think about fruits and vegetables on the farm that don't get gleaned, I am personally less concerned about that food because it will be tilled under and will provide some nutrient value to the soil. But it's what comes to us in our homes. And to answer the question specifically, things like the tops of a lot of vegetables, carrot tops, beet tops, radish tops, those tend to be sort of indiscriminately cut off and discarded. And those all can be used to make lots of different delicious food products.
Great, thank you, Thomas. And our next question asks, as you've implemented sustainability initiatives and guidelines to reduce waste at Baldor, have you received any pushback or any challenges?
It's a super question. Yes, I have. And I think that most of the pushback comes from the fact that this is going to require and had required a change in process. At Baldor, our #1 priority is to provide quality, the highest quality produce and specialty food items to our customers. And we are never going to compromise that. When we think about our food production and the fact that we may have to alter production slightly to capture all these goods, we never want to do anything to inhibit, etc. And so we really spend a lot of effort behind training people and have them understand how exactly we best collect these products. But it does take a lot of training, and there could be some resistance to change.
Great, and our next question comes from Mark, and he wants to know, how are the discards pulled from households for the Sparks component?
So we don't pull any sparks from any household. Anytime we refer to a spark at Baldor, it'll be something that's created in our food production facility at Baldor. We don't take any food back from any organizations, homes, or businesses and turn them into sparks. Everything is within our production facility here at Baldor. And actually, Sarah, getting back to question 2 again, another point that might be helpful in terms of the way we change perception around the value of these sparks. I took a lot of opportunities to actually collect sparks in the beginning and actually cook them here on site. And I was bold enough to cook them for very illustrious chefs, as well as senior management here at Baldor. as well as staff at Baldor, and get their feedback on the food. And oftentimes I wouldn't tell people I was cooking Spark. For example, I took the sweet potato peelings last fall and I made a sweet potato gratin, which was actually very well received and became part of our Thanksgiving lunch for all of our employees. So I think that oftentimes, do I set an example and allowing people to taste the food, they can understand that that actually is a very valuable food product and delicious, and something they should be doing as well.
That sounds delicious. Thank you for sharing that. And sounds like a creative way too. So this next question actually leads well into what you were just discussing. And this listener wants to know, how much does education become a part of this? For example, knowing how to use the less utilized parts of a vegetable for consumption.
Well, I think it's all about education. We're not going to change perception until people understand and perceive this food as edible food. If you think about the way our grandparents, our great-grandparents cooked food and handled and managed their food assets, they ate everything that was possibly consumable, probably because food was much more expensive relative to income at the time, and also because food was not as readily available, and so you had to be more resourceful. But today, 2016, we are obligated to share our food assets with those people who are food insecure, and also to think about the fact that whatever we produce as a food product in the United States or around the world, that it actually gets consumed. Let's not overproduce food that's never going to be consumed, but let's produce the amount of food we need for our consumption and to make sure, you know, that our fellow man has access to food and valuable food. And we will be able to do that, I believe, relatively easily if we can educate people about what is actually consumable and what should be eaten.
Thanks, Thomas. Our next question comes from Rich, and I think you answered this partially talking about Misfit Juicery, but he wants to know, does Baldor work with food banks or other food recovery agencies and food rescue efforts? If so, how do you overcome the very challenging logistics in food rescue?
So when you're located in an urban environment, as we are, we're headquartered in the Bronx, New York. It's a very densely populated part of our country. So we actually work with a number of food donation partners, City Harvest, Food Bank of New York, Pat's Outreach Ministry, and a few other smaller food donation partners. They come here, some of them come every day and pick up food from us, either in the mornings or the afternoon. That food is normally, we would identify as food that we don't find fit for sale to our customers for probably more cosmetic reasons than any. And so we will choose to donate that food. And it's because there's such a demand for food in urban environments, we have no problem whatsoever finding donation partners to take that food. We've built very good relationships with them over the years. And again, they pick up regularly. So the food is pretty fresh and healthy, and we feel very good about getting much more produce into the hands, again, of the food insecure in our community.
Great, and our next question comes from our listener, Prem, and they want to know, what type of demand generation activities has Baldor undergone to sell Sparks?
So we haven't had to do too much on the demand side. The need for, or rather the opportunity for us to get Sparks utilized in a meaningful way has not been the challenge. The challenge for us really has been to do it in such a way that does not have any additional negative impact on the environment. So that means whatever we're going to do to further process this food, we want to do it as close to us as possible. We want to try to eliminate transportation whenever we possibly can. And what we're not really interested in doing, again, is creating additional cost to the environment. And so most of our solutions are relatively close. So for example, Misfit Juiceries, we have a location already in Washington, D.C. When they order Sparks from us, those are shipped from our Bronx location. Our fresh cuts department will then prepare those and ship those off to Washington, D.C., and then they're shipped to that partner of ours. So we try to make sure we're working with partners who, while they're further processing, that they're nearby and part of our logistics network.
Thanks, Thomas. And our next question reads, do you also partner with the farmers and producers you source from to reduce post-harvest loss?
So it's a super question. We do. For example, this past fall, I was working with one of our farm partners in Petaluma, California, who contacted me that they had some leftover product. So I reached that they had not sold, that they wanted to glean from their farms, but before they did that, they wanted to make sure they had a partner to take it. And I reached out through my network to some regional players in that marketplace, and they agreed to take the product and distribute it within their organization. So that was a really, what I call a great example of us working together as a community to collect and distribute really valuable food products within our system. And by the way, it's a good time to mention that in that particular example, we want to make sure that whenever we are gleaning with our farmers, that we have a partner who's actually going to take that food. The worst thing we could do is collect that food and then not have an end user to actually consume it, because then obviously we have the daunting task of finding another home for it, and hopefully that home is never landfill.
Definitely. And Dana wants to know, how can a large company, and she uses Nestle as an example, I'm not sure if she works there or not. Dana, maybe you can put that in the chat box. But again, she asks, how can a large company like Nestle better manage meat, milk, etc. in the waste stream?
So I think that there are new technologies emerging. Union Crate is one of them. Spoiler alert is another. There are new technologies that are emerging which allow large organizations, small organizations to better managing their buying practices. A lot of times, and sort of when they buy, and how they buy, and the quantities that they buy. So technology to support on the purchasing side to make sure we are doing the best we possibly can to reduce waste is really the first step on the sourcing side. I'm not particularly familiar with Nestle, but a lot of large corporations are looking at ways to partner as well with donation partners to make sure that those products do get in the hands of the food insecure as efficiently as they possibly can. I'm really encouraged to say that this sustainability in food is not a new topic by any means, but it really seems to be gaining some very good momentum, and it's very exciting. So you'll see more positive things happening in the near future.
Thank you. We have Dana's from Food Shift, so thanks, Dana. She's not with Nestle.
Oh, hey, Dana, how are you? Good to talk to you, or good to hear from you.
Thanks for clarifying, Dana. So our next question asks, are you utilizing any new food technologies in order to reduce waste, or are these methods fairly simple and easily implemented? Anything you are especially excited about?
Yes, there is something I'm very excited about. We have been looking at the dehydration side of things for some time now, and again, we want to make sure that we're working with the right partner to dehydrate. We are very excited about some testing we've done to dehydrate vegetables to create the dried vegetable blend, and we are encouraged that not only to put what would be wasted food back into the food system so that it's never considered garbage, it's never considered waste, it's all part of our production process. We can take this spark, we can dehydrate it. It does two things. It, one, produces this delicious vegetable product that can be utilized in all sorts of ways, but at the same time, it reduces dramatically the amount of organics going to landfill, because as you can imagine, if we're dehydrating vegetables, we're extracting more than 90% of the moisture that was in that product. And so it's a great way to preserve, it's a great way to prepare for the times of the year when food is less available fresh, and it's a great way to manage the food when we have excess like this time of year. So I'm really excited about that, and I think that there are going to be far-reaching opportunities for dehydration down the road. The other thing I'll mention is, and I'm very excited about this, that more and more people are talking about pickling and jarring their own food products, not only at home, but also in food service facilities when food is in abundance. And this is the way our ancestors did it. And it's a great solution to the times of the year when food is readily available for use in other times. And just to illustrate that, even in my own family, this time of year, much to my wife's chagrin, we will process. Last year we did 250 pounds of tomatoes and we made 94 quarts. And it also became a Christmas gift that we gave to friends. So it was a way to utilize tomatoes when they're in abundance, and it fed our family's Sunday pasta for 6 or 7 months.
That's great. I love it. Our next question reads, how does food waste become more sexy and exciting so more individuals and companies put an effort into reducing waste?
Well, all you have to do is look at the Misfit Juicery website and you can see how sexy food sports are. And make them into wonderful food products. I think that as people begin to understand more and more the nutritional values of the outer parts of the vegetable, and that's what tends to be a spark, if not always, then it starts getting very sexy because you start thinking about, wow, this is healthy, this is what I need to eat, this is good for me, this is good for my environment, this is good for my pocketbook. Let me just mention that sustainability initiatives are always good for the bottom line. If we manage our assets in a more efficient way, it's going to be good for our organizations and good for us personally. So there's a lot of value to us and to us utilizing these assets better. And I can't think of anything more sexy.
I agree. So our next listener wants to know about the product that you had mentioned during the competition with the different quinoa balls, etc., and if that is for sale or where it would be for sale when it comes for sale.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm sure that the students who are involved in making those products would love to sell them. Those were prototypes designed by students at the Drexel Food Lab. And those particular products are not specifically available for sale, but I could imagine that if you reached out to the Drexel Food Lab, you could speak to Jonathan Deutsch or Ali Zeitz, who's on his team, who manages the Food Lab, to find out, is there an opportunity to make these products available? And the question is a good one because what we're doing is we're getting very creative around the use of what would have otherwise been wasted food. And that's just tremendously exciting. And we have these young minds who are really jazzed up about taking these assets and converting them into valuable food items. So they would be, I'm sure, very happy to talk to whoever asked that question. That's Drexel's Food Lab in the School of Sports and Hospitality Management at Drexel University.
Great, thank you. And Christy wants to know, you mentioned consuming different parts of items which we have not traditionally eaten, or traditionally not eaten. Do you have any resources or websites of new ideas of using different parts of produce? That way we are not reinventing the wheel or hurting any tummies.
Right, that's a great question. Actually, there are several. The easiest thing to do would be to Google fruits and vegetable skins that you could eat. That's a great start. You'll see there's several articles written about them, and in many instances, you'll get comments from people who have tried them and they mention what they like or don't like, or even in many instances what they do with these skins. So there are tremendous resources out there that tell you, what is edible and what is not edible. And again, it's just a simple search. A lot of times it's just a cultural norm. Like, for example, I've noticed that some people, when they're feeding their children, will cut off the ends of the bread. And you can imagine the sustainability person when he comes out and wonder why that happens. Now, I have no problem cutting the ends of bread off as long as you do something with those ends. If you're going to turn them into breadcrumbs, I'm all good. But if you're just going to discard those, then what are you teaching your children? That there are parts of food that should be wasted. And so, how do we? That's a social norm that needs to change. Yeah, if you don't want to eat the bread because you're making a canapé or something that you're creating not to use the end, that's fine. But let's do something with those bread ends. Let's make breadcrumbs. Let's do something with it.
That's another great suggestion, Thomas. It looks like John is actually tuned in today from Drexel. So
Hi, John.
We can say hello to him as well. Rich wants to know, does Baldor participate in the refed food waste initiatives being driven by NRDC and other organizations?
Thank you for that question. I had the good fortune of being invited to the refed launch at Stanford University. And that was an extremely exciting roadmap to be created for all of us to review and see how we could change some of our cultural norms within our organizations. I'm very much involved with that organization. In fact, I received an email yesterday from Eva Baldor to answer some additional questions that as they think about next steps for refed. So if you haven't seen the refed document, REFED, if you search that, you can get a hold of that document and read through it. It's really very helpful. They also just created a new video, which is really, really spectacular, and does a wonderful job of illustrating the impact of food waste in our environments. I would highly, if we had time, I would encourage us to watch that now, but you can do that in your own time. Watch that refed video. Thank you, John.
Great, thank you. And Thomas wants to know, fruits and vegetables are a huge industry. How far can the Sparks idea scale? So I think he's referring to beyond kind of produce.
Right. So Sparks, when it comes to fruits and vegetables, unfortunately, when we think about food production, and depending on what our finished product is, if the finished product demands that the outer layer be eliminated, then I can tell you with great certainty, we've got a long way to go before we put these Sparks to work. If we're just thinking about fruits and vegetables, but if we're thinking about other food products, no different than fruits and vegetables, I think part of the process that organization would go through is no different than we did here, which is to experiment, to get very creative, to get the right people in the room to brainstorm around solutions that could be, and then go out and find partners that can help make them reality. There are very few food items that you couldn't figure out some valuable use for. And by the way, one of those valuable uses might be composting. It might be, improving soil, because our soil in so many places in our country is compromised. So there may be other solutions that aren't necessarily for human consumption, but do fix another issue. That's a great question. Thank you.
Great. And our next question reads, in your opinion, how do petitions like the one to make Walmart and Whole Foods start selling ugly produce have potential to change the perspective of consumers and retailers on food waste?
Super. I don't know, these questions are amazing. It's going to have a huge impact. I think that what we've created over the last 50, 75 years in our retail organizations, by creating, by identifying that products should always look the same, the apple should be the same size, the lemon should be the same size, and that sort of, and so we have small lemons, we have bigger lemons, what do we do with those? If we're talking about that kind of product, then there is usually no blemish or imperfection about it. It's just a size issue. I think that's low-hanging fruit here, because I believe that people would say, oh, I'm okay eating a bigger lemon or a small lemon. When we talk about the blemish, I think we just have the blemish fruits and vegetables. I think we just have to become accustomed to seeing them more often, and when we do, we'll be less anxious about utilizing them and eating them. There is some discussion that actually imperfect produce is even more valuable nutritionally. I'm not sure what that logic is, but I've heard that. But it's certainly equally nutritious. And so there's no compelling reason not to eat these foods. The only argument would be, well, it's not so visually appealing when I'm looking to purchase it. But if you're going to take that potato home and you're going to cook it, by the time you're done cooking it, you will have eliminated what would have been a blemished appearance. So I think not only is this very exciting that they're doing it, but I think we need to support organizations who are taking steps to sell these products, because that is going to be the best way to change that cultural norm.
Thanks, Thomas. And time for just one more question. So it reads, what upcoming projects do you have at Baldor that you are excited about regarding sustainability or food waste? Can you share? And lastly, what is one of your favorite ways to reduce waste in your own household.
Oh, great. Okay. So we're doing two things at Baldor, which are extraordinarily exciting. And those of you who have visited me here who have not heard me talk about these, I look forward to showing these changes to you. And those who hopefully will visit, I'm glad to show you these. And so they are. The first is we've embarked on a 108,000 square foot expansion to our building. And as a part of that, we are going to be installing in our parking lots solar panels, which will cover the cars when they're parked there. But the design of them is to generate a substantial amount of the energy that we need to power our new facility. And our Vice President of Operations, Mandy Lopes, is really visionary when it comes to sustainability. And even though we didn't call it that for the last several years, he's been a great partner of mine. So that's happening. And the second thing that we're doing is we are converting all of our pallet jacks to hydrogen power. What that basically means is hydrogen is going to be used to power a fuel cell, which will then ultimately power the pallet jack. And that will mean that within our organization, there'll be two things. One, no dependency on the grid for all of our pallet jacks, which is a tremendous amount of energy. And the second thing is there'll be no emissions from those machines that are operating in our organization. So we see this as a huge give back to not only our environment, but also to help us as a country continue to move forward new technologies, because this will be a place that when people visit, they will see what a sustainable organization can do to continue to reduce the demand on energy in an urban environment. To answer the second question, what do I do at home? I make my wife crazy because my preference is to never buy any, not to never buy any food, but I'm always encouraging her and myself and our children to eat what we have first and then shop. So number one thing is that I would encourage everyone to do is at least once or twice on the residential side to really pare down what you have in your refrigerator or freezer. It gives you a great opportunity to sort of get rid of the stuff that's towards the back. And it also helps you to understand that the cavities, our refrigerator cavities are huge and they hold a tremendous amount of food. And so what we don't want to do is to fill them and then not eat the food. So I would encourage that sort of once a month or twice a month cleaning out of the refrigerator. But in terms of food processing at home, one of the things I would encourage you to do is maybe 6 days a week, take all of your trimmings or your sparks from your vegetable production, whatever you're cooking for that week, take all of it, no matter what it is, the tops of the peppers, the core of the cauliflower, if in fact you're not eating it as a core of cauliflower, which I would encourage you to do. But whatever is remaining, the onion skins, the garlic skins, etc., put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in your freezer. And then once a week, at our house, I like to do this on Fridays as much as possible, we take that bag out, we make a broth out of that product, and then we use that broth in another food item. So we'll either make risotto out of it, or we'll make totally neat broth. But that's at least 1 day a week that we are also not eating meat, and we really focus on just a vegetable diet that one day a week. So that's hopefully a good solution for you.
That sounds delicious. I think we're all ready for lunch now.
I'll just mention also, if you think about that food, if you make that broth once a week with all that food that you accumulated and put into your freezer, what you have remaining, so you eat the broth, the food product that's remaining in that pot is well on its way to being composted. So if you put that into your composter on your property, or however you might do that in an urban environment, that's going to turn to dirt much faster than a raw product that you would be putting into your composter. So it will actually help accelerate the amount of dirt you can create or compost that you can create.
Yeah, that's a really great point as well, Thomas. So unfortunately, we're out of time for today, but thank you so much for joining us. Thomas, it's been a pleasure to have you here, really an honor to have you and for you to share all your stories and knowledge with us. But I also want to thank our listeners for sending in their questions and making the Q&A part of this webinar possible. So again, it's been a pleasure, and thank you all for your time. We do have a webinar coming up again next Wednesday at 12 Eastern with the CEO of TechnoServe, William Warschauer. So hopefully you can all tune in then as well. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.